Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. Today we're going to learn photosynthesis pathways for BWJ 30603 Ecological Dynamics. I'm Dr. Frizani Pai from the University Tun Hussein On, Malaysia. We are going to learn specifically on these two topics, which are the principles of the photosynthesis, and also we're going to have a look at the differences of the photosynthetic pathways between the C3, C4 and the chem plants. These are the summarized diagram for the photosynthesis. The process of photosynthesis is commonly written as the 6CO2 plus 6H2O, C6H12O6 and also 6O2. So this means that the reactants, which are the 6 carbon dioxide molecules and the 6 water molecules, are converted by the light energy captured by the chlorophyll into a sugar molecule and 6 oxygen molecules, the products. The light energy enters the process of photosynthesis when the pigments absorb the light. In plants, the pigment molecules absorb only the visible light for the photosynthesis. So the best wavelengths of the visible light for the photosynthesis, it falls within the blue range, which is around 425 to 450 nanometers, and within the red range, around 600 to 700 nanometers. So therefore, the best light sources for photosynthesis should ideally emit light in the blue and red ranges. Chlorophyll, any member of the most important class of pigments, and it is involved heavily in photosynthesis. So chlorophyll, it is found in virtually all photosynthetic organisms, including the green plants, cyanobacteria, and also algae. The light-dependent reactions, it happens in the thylakoid membrane of the chloroplast, and it occurs in the presence of sunlight. And in this reaction, it involves these three productions, which are the NADPH production, the O2 production through the photolysis, and also the ATP production through the mechanism known as chemiosmosis. The light-independent reactions of photosynthesis, it takes place within the stroma, and it contains enzymes that work with the ATP and NADPH to fix the carbon from the carbon dioxide into molecules that can be used to build glucose. Photosynthesis is the process by which plants use the sunlight, the water, the carbon dioxide to create or to produce the oxygen and energy in the form of sugar. So this process is carried out by plants, by algae, and some types of bacteria, in which they capture the energy from the sunlight to produce the oxygen and also to produce a chemical energy which they store in glucose or any type of sugar. So inside the plant cell, there are small organelles which we call chloroplasts, and this chloroplast is store the energy of the sunlight. And within the thylakoid membranes of the chloroplast is a light-absorbing pigment, and it is called chlorophyll. So chlorophyll, they are very heavily involved or responsible for giving the plant its green color. During photosynthesis, chlorophyll absorbs the energy from the blue and red light waves, and it reflects the green light waves, so it makes the plant appear green. There are many steps behind the process of photosynthesis, but it can be broken down into two major stages, the light-dependent reactions and also the light-independent reactions. Visible light ranges from low blue to far red light and is described as the wavelengths between the 380 to 750 nanometers. And the region between the 400 and also the 700 nanometers is what plants use to drive the photosynthesis, and usually we refer to that range as PAR, P-A-R, photosynthetically active radiation. So chlorophyll is the major pigments used by the plants for capturing the light energy. So there are four types of chlorophylls, chlorophyll A, B, C, and D. So chlorophyll A, it is mostly found in all higher plants. So chlorophyll A, they are found in all higher plants, in algae and also in cyanobacteria. Chlorophyll B, they are found in higher plants and also the green algae. Chlorophyll C, they are not found in any plants, but they are found in diatoms, in dinoflagellates, and also the brown algae. And the chlorophyll D, it only can be found in the red algae. So this is the diagram showing the relationship between the light-dependent and the light-independent reactions. So in the light-dependent reactions, the energy from the sunlight is absorbed by the chlorophyll, and that energy is converted into the stored chemical energy. And meanwhile, in the light-independent reactions, the chemical energy harvested during the light-dependent reactions too, it will drive the assembly of the sugar molecules from the carbon dioxide. So for this light-dependent reaction, so the first step is the excitation of the photosystems by the light energy. So when the light is absorbed by one of the many pigments in photosystem 2, or also known as the P680, so the energy is passed inward from pigment to pigment until it reaches the reaction center. So in the reaction center, the energy is transferred to P680 or photosystem 2, and it boosts the electron to a high energy level. So that electron with the high energy level is passed to an acceptor molecule, and it is being replaced with the electron from the splitting of water. And the splitting of water too, it releases the oxygen that we use to breathe. The second step in light-dependent reaction is the production of ATP via an electron transport chain. So the high energy electron, it travels down on the electron on the electron transport chain. So it's losing the energy as it goes down the electron transport chain. So some of the released energy too, it drives pumping the hydrogen ion from the stroma into the thallic interior, and it builds a gradient. So as the proton ion flows down the gradient and into the stroma, they will pass through the ATP synthase, this pink structure, and it drives the ATP production in a process known as chemiosmosis. And the third step in the light-dependent reaction is the reduction of a NADP+ and the photolysis of water. So during this step, the high energy electron, they travels down a very short journey of the electron transport chain, and at the end of the chain, the electron is passed to the NADP+ to make the NADPH. So the net effect of these steps in the light-dependent reaction is to convert the light energy into chemical energy in the form of ATP and NADPH. So remember in the previous step, step 2, it already produces the ATP, and in this step, step 3, it is now producing the NADPH. Because the ATP and NADPH from this reaction, the light-dependent reaction, will be used to make the sugars or the glucose in the next stage of the photosynthesis in the Calvin cycle through the light-independent reaction. So the light-independent reactions of the Calvin cycle, it can be organized into 3 basic stages. So the fixation or the carboxylation, the reduction, and also the regeneration. And these reactions actually have several names sebenarnya associated with them. So other names for light-independent reactions besides the Calvin cycle is, you may have heard the Calvin-Benson cycle and also the dark reactions. So dark reactions, that is the most outdated name, okay? And it can be misleading as well because it incorrectly implies that the reaction to only occurs at night ataupun it is independent of light. So it is not true, and that is why most scientists are no longer use that term, dark reaction too. Alright, so the first step in the Calvin cycle, which is the carbon fixation. So that carbon fixation, it happens in the stroma of the plant. So in addition to the CO2, there are two other components that are present to drive or to initiate the light-independent reactions. So the first one is the enzyme called the Rubisco enzyme, and the second one is molecules. All right, so it is called the RUBP, ribulose biphosphate. So Rubisco, it is an enzyme, so you know that the function of the enzyme as a catalyst. So Rubisco catalyzes the reaction between the CO2 and also the RUBP. So each turn of the cycle, it involves only one RUBP and one carbon dioxide, and it will form ataupun produce two molecules of the GP. And this process is called the carbon fixation because the CO2 is fixed from an inorganic form into organic molecules. The second step is the reduction of the glycerate 3-phosphate. So the ATP and NADPH, remember we produced that in the previous reaction, in the light-dependent reaction. So now they are used to convert the 6 molecules of the GP into 6 molecules of a chemical known as the PP or triose phosphate. So 6 molecules of ATP, 6 molecules of NADPH are used in this step, okay, in this reaction. So for the ATP when they loses one of the phosphate atom, then it is converted into ADP, okay. Meanwhile, for the NADPH, so kalau energy and also the hydrogen atom are lost, then it will be converted into the NADP+. So both of these molecules, they will return to their light-dependent reactions to be reused and to be re-energized. And the last step in the Calvin cycle, the regeneration of the RUBP. So these two cycles are in this Calvin cycle, 2 cycles are required to produce a single glucose monomer. Okay, so if you want to produce a more complex, complicated, a longer glucose, for example polysaccharides, then more cycles need to be done. And the remaining TP cycles, TP molecules that are not used for the sugar production, then it will be recombined to regenerate the RUBP. Now we have come to the second and last part of our topic. So the C3, C4 and CHEM are the 3 different processes that plants use to fix the carbon during the process of photosynthesis. So for the purpose of this topic, let's watch a video to summarize the processes involved, and I believe the video explains the pathways way better than I do. Okay, so let's watch that.
Photosynthesis is the process by which plants capture the energy of the sun to make carbohydrates. But there are minor variations in how plants do this, depending on the environment in which the plant lives. In this tutorial, we'll look at the differences between the 3 types of photosynthesis, C3, C4, and CHEM. Most plants, around 85% or so, carry out C3 photosynthesis. As we will see, the name C3 has to do with the type of carbon molecule produced during the process. C3 photosynthesis occurs in the mesophyll cells of the C3 plant, which are located just under the surface of the leaves and other tissues. Let's take a quick look at how photosynthesis occurs in these cells. During C3 photosynthesis, CO2 is taken up and transported directly to the Calvin cycle, where it's fixed into a 3-carbon molecule, thus the name C3. If the stomata are open, CO2 moves in and oxygen moves out of the cell. But under hot or dry conditions, when the stomata are closed, oxygen accumulates, which inhibits the amount of C3 that can be made. Some plants have evolved an adaptation that allows them to be successful in hot, dry conditions. These plants carry out C4 photosynthesis instead of C3 photosynthesis. During C4 photosynthesis, CO2 moves into the mesophyll cell and is immediately fixed into a 4-carbon molecule, thus the name C4 photosynthesis. But the anatomy of a C4 plant is different from that of a C3 plant. A somewhat simplified version of this process is shown here. In a C4 leaf, chloroplasts are located in mesophyll cells, but they are also located in bundle sheath cells, which surround the leaf vein. CO2 moves from the mesophyll cells into the bundle sheath cells where the Kelvin cycle occurs. This shields the plant from the oxygen buildup that would otherwise occur when the stomata are closed during dry conditions. A second way of addressing the problem of oxygen is to change the timing of photosynthesis. This is called CAM photosynthesis, and in many ways it's similar to C4 photosynthesis, except that the timing of the process changes. During CAM photosynthesis, CO2 is taken up during the night when the stomata are open and is fixed into a 4-carbon molecule. It's then stored until daylight as an intermediate molecule, which gives the CAM cycle its name. This adaptation allows photosynthesis to occur in drier climates than in both C3 and C4 photosynthesis. A great example of a CAM plant is the cactus. Let's do a quick review. During C3 photosynthesis, CO2 is taken up and transported directly to the Kelvin cycle. The C4 pathway alters the location of photosynthesis, and the CAM pathway changes the timing. Both of these adaptations allow some plants to survive in environments that are less than ideal for the typical C3 plant.
C3 photosynthesis, it refers to the major type of photosynthesis and it produces the 3-carbon compound via the Kelvin cycle. Tetapi for C4 photosynthesis, it refers to the photosynthesis that has the 4-carbon compound intermediate, and it will be split into a 3-carbon compound dekat Kelvin cycle too. And in contrast, the CAM photosynthesis too refers to another type of photosynthesis in which it collects or gathers the sunlight during the day and fixes the carbon dioxide at night. For C3 photosynthesis, majority of plants will undergo the C3 photosynthesis. But for C4 photosynthesis, it occurs around 3% of the vascular plants. And meanwhile, for the CAM photosynthesis, it occurs in plants yang ada adaptation towards hot and dry environments. Okay, for example, the cactus. So the C3 photosynthesis and the CAM photosynthesis, they occurs in the mesophyll cells. However, for the C4 photosynthesis, it occurs in the 2 types of cells, which are the mesophyll cells and also the bundle sheath cells. Besides the differences, they do possess some similarities too. So between the C3, C4 and CAM photosynthesis, so these are the 3 types of photosynthetic process, and these 3 happens in plants. So both the light reaction and the Kelvin cycle, they occur similarly in each type of this photosynthesis. It's just that they differ by the method of carbon fixation. So with that, thank you very much.